Rick Collins, and I'm here with Tyler Kern today. We're talking U.S. men's national team soccer. Got a big game tonight, playing against Panama. This is really a do or die for the men's national team. They need this win. What's it going to take to get this win, and what should we be looking at as concerns going into this game?
What the U.S. men's national team has really struggled with over the last couple of games, I think, has been creating good scoring in and around the box. They've gotten into dangerous areas, but not really created chances with those opportunities. And so what they need to do is find a way to get Christian Pulisic as active and involved as possible. I think it's time to admit that he is the best player. He's definitely the best attacking player for the U.S. men's national team. Regardless of if that makes you uncomfortable because he's 19 or not, he is the best player for the team. And so let's set the team up in a way that gives him the most freedom, that gives him the most license to create those opportunities for other players like Josie Altidore, like maybe Bobby Wood or Clint Dempsey, depending on who they decide to start up top. But let's go out there and let's really give him the freedom. Let's give him the keys to drive this car because you need goals. And that's been a problem. And we know Panama is going to sit back with a back four with probably two defensive midfielders. And so how are you going to break that down? You got to have guys running at defenders. You got to have some creativity, and Christian Pulisic brings that.
Well, and these games have always been between the U.S. and Panama tight games because Panama is great at sitting back and defending. They're going to take their chances with a Blas Perez or whoever they decide to start up front and scoring, basically kick it all the way down the field and go chase. And the U.S. men's national team has to figure out how to contain the ball on their side of the field and create chances. Can Pulisic, with the team around him that they're looking at starting tonight, create enough chances that this U.S. team can score more than one goal tonight?
The last 4 games against Panama in these type of situations have ended up 1-1. And so that is the big question, right? Can they score more than one goal? I think they can. I think with the firepower that they have, with Josie Altidore, Bobby Wood, Christian Pulisic, like you mentioned, I think they can. The question is, it's tough to break down a team like Panama. Like you mentioned, they will sit back. They will get numbers behind the ball, and that's not easy. And so I believe the U.S. can. I think that they should commit more numbers forward. And in doing so, this is going to make some people uncomfortable, but I think they should go to a 3-man back line. So 3 dedicated defenders and then 5 in the midfield, utilizing the speed of a DeAndre Yedlin who just came back and has been playing the last couple of weeks for Newcastle. He's a burner. He's got a lot of speed out wide right. Put Jorge Villafana or Paul Arriola out wide left. Just hard-running guys that can go up and down the flanks of the field to give you some width. Let those guys run their butts off and then push numbers forward, utilizing whether it's Josie Altidore, Clinton Dempsey, or Josie Altidore, Bobby Wood up top. Got to push those numbers forward, got to push those defenders back and give Pulisic the freedom to operate right at the top of the penalty area.
Let's look at those back 3, and I like the guys Villafana and
Yedlin out wide.
Yedlin out, exactly. Out wide because of the speed and because we need that speed in defense to, when they do counter, to break that up. What are we doing in the center back position right now? Because, without John Brooks, who everybody thought coming in to this World Cup qualifying, he's the guy they want back there.
Right.
And now with his injuries, how can they manage that position going forward? Because I think a lot of people think Omar Gonzalez is not really the guy to do it.
I don't necessarily think that he is either. I think Bruce Arena does think he is, though. So Bruce and I are going to have a difference of opinion on that. If you're going to play a back 3, which I think that they should in this case, I think Jeff Cameron has to be the middle guy in the back 3. That's the guy that organizes everybody. That's the guy that keeps everybody together, lets you know when you should step forward, when you should step back. Where everybody should be positionally. He plays that position for Stoke City in the Premier League, so one of the best leagues in the world. He's capable of doing that.
Right.
On the left side, I would play Matt Beasler. On the right, I would play Omar Gonzalez. It's imperfect, but it's what I would do tonight. If they go with a 4-man back line, I would go Jeff Cameron on the right side, Matt Beasler on the left side. Matt Beasler's left-footed. It's just better for distribution that way. And then go Jorge Villafana out left and DeAndre Yedlin on the right. Again, it's not perfect. You would rather have John Brooks, I believe, who plays for Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, plays in Germany, one of the best leagues in the world also. And
but he's just been so hindered with injuries.
Hindered with injuries and also confidence sometimes. In the 4-0 loss against Costa Rica back in November, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen by a U.S. center back, and certainly something I never expected out of him given how talented he is. And so They won't have him until this November, so it's going to have to deal with it. Exactly. But Jeff Cameron, he's had some bad games. He had a bad game against Costa Rica in the 2-0 loss. But he has been a very steady performer for the U.S. men's national team, and I would bet on him to continue.
And I wonder about him coming off the bench. If they decide for him to come off the bench tonight, the reasoning being maybe because he has flexibility in the positions he can come in for, and that would be really the only reason I could see him coming off the bench. Other than that, that's a guy, in my opinion, you have to start. He's one of the best players on the field when he's out there.
Right, I agree. For me, there are a couple of guys that are the first names on the team sheet for me. Jeff Cameron is one. Christian Pulisic is another. Michael Bradley is the other one. And then I could probably be persuaded on just about anybody else on the team right now. Maybe Josie Altidore, I think, is a must start. But that's 4 guys that you kind of build your team around. For me, Jeff Cameron's a must start. I think Bruce Arena feels that way also. But we'll see. He's only made 1 start for Stoke since coming back from injury.
So easing him back in potentially.
Potentially. And like you mentioned, he does have positional flexibility. He can play out wide right. He has done that for Stoke in the Premier League. He's also played defensive midfield for Stoke as well. I don't see him playing there because the partnership with Michael Bradley is what you have to consider there. Michael Bradley is the established guy in the midfield for the U.S. men's national team, and whoever does slide into that midfield with him has to create a pairing.
He needs to be more the Jermaine Jones type player who's worked well with Bradley in the past, and now we know Jermaine Jones is really not a part of the future of this team.
Right.
I think after seeing the selections the last few times around.
Yeah, and it was time, and it's part of what makes what's going on with the U.S. men's national team interesting right now, in that they are in a change of eras, I would say. Clint Dempsey is still a factor, but no longer the guy that you're building your team around. Jermaine Jones has fallen out of the picture for the U.S. men's national team. Landon Donovan's retired for 3 years now. So it's a changing of eras, and I think we're going to look back at the struggles that they've had over this cycle and look back at it as, man, we really lost some foundational players for this team, and replacing them didn't come as easy as we thought. Now, I think Kellen Acosta of FC Dallas could really hop in there and do a good job in that Jermaine Jones role.
And I love that you're representing FC Dallas right here.
Got to rep the hat, man. Also, the hair just wasn't going to happen this morning. So, but Kellen Acosta is
the best of us.
I suppose so. But Kellen Acosta is a great. He can cover a lot of ground. That's something I like a lot about him. He can spray long passes across the field, long diagonal balls that switch the point of attack, which is also good. What he needs to do better at is imposing himself in the game a little bit more. Is going places and demanding the ball and dictating the flow of the game as opposed to letting it come to him.
And he's done that with FC Dallas, and he's worked well with Mauro Diaz.
Right.
So I think, there is a partnership. In Mauro Diaz, some of the skill sets that he has just on the ball and his decision-making, very similar, maybe a little bit better than what Michael Bradley does, but very similar type of player. And I think you're right, Kellen Acosta could fill in and play with Bradley the way he does with Mauro Diaz.
Right, and he does provide great defensive cover for Michael Bradley, which is also a good thing. And if you're going to have wide defensive players like Yedlin and like Villafaña or whoever you put over on the left, those are guys that are going to go forward, so you're going to have to rely on guys like Acosta to fill in behind them. Because like you mentioned earlier, Panama is going to want to counterattack and counterattack quickly. And going down the wings is a good way to do that if the U.S. is going to push their fullbacks forward. And so having a guy like Acosta that has the speed and the positional awareness to get back to cover for those guys will be important defensively.
What do you think happens in the game tonight?
I think it is physical. I think the U.S. comes out and takes care of business, honestly. They've been in this position before. I remember last cycle they needed a big win against El Salvador, I believe it was. They came out and got 2 quick goals in the first half and put it away. And I think the U.S. is going to be able to do that tonight. The home field advantage is going to be awesome. If you haven't watched the U.S. game in a long time, I would watch tonight because the stadium in Orlando is just beautiful.
Their home games for Orlando City are pretty incredible. They really pack it in.
Yeah, and so I think the crowd is going to be behind them. There's the sense of urgency. Just about everyone that you could want to be healthy is healthy for the most part, except for John Brooks. There aren't excuses anymore. And I think Bruce Arenas pulled out all the stops. He brought in Bob Bradley, a previous U.S. men's national team coach and father of
They've
Michael
worked
Bradley.
together before, though, so this isn't like totally out of the box.
Not out of the blue at all, but he's pulling out all the stops and just kind of bringing in different people just to make sure, hey, all of our bases are covered, we're ready to go. And I think they get it done. I think the U.S. Keeps a clean sheet and wins 2-0.
2-0. I was going to say 2-0 would be my prediction as well. They need that win, and they've got one more game after this. But if they win this game, they're kind of in the driver's seat in terms of the next match. They tied, they're through basically, and obviously Panama's a much more. I believe it's Honduras is the last game.
The final game is against Trinidad and Tobago.
Sorry, Trinidad and Tobago.
In Trinidad, that's not.
If they win this game, they don't have to worry about that.
For the most part, yeah. So they are trailing Panama in the standings right now by 1 point.
Yeah.
The U.S. is in 4th place. Panama is in 3rd. Costa Rica is in 2nd. Mexico's in 1st. There are 2 qualifiers left, obviously, like you mentioned. So if they beat Panama, they'd go up on Panama by 2 points, and so then just a draw against Trinidad should do it and lock in that 3rd spot, which is crucial because the 3rd spot is an automatic qualifier. You're automatically into the World Cup if you make the 3rd spot. You're good. If you're in the 4th spot, you got to go and you got to play a playoff game against the team that was in the 5th spot in Asia's qualifying, which they are playing that right now. It is Australia and Syria. They tied 1-1 yesterday, and so the next game will decide who that 4th place in CONCACAF will end up playing.
Which I think a lot of people think the U.S. will probably easily beat either of those teams, but you just don't want to think about that game. Let's think about this game. Let's win this one tonight and really go home from there. I mean, that means basically we're in the World Cup, and the only question is then what can we do in the World Cup? And we'll talk about that next time.
Absolutely.